Now on 4, The World at Your Feet follows New Zealand's Milford track, and incidentally this is the programme postponed from the 8th of August.
As wind blows over the ocean, it gathers moisture. The westerlies of the southern hemisphere blow ceaselessly round the world with few obstructions. One challenge to the wet winds is the islands of New Zealand. Reaching land, the moist air rises, cools, forms clouds, and then it rains. Fiordland is one of the wettest places in New Zealand. Fiordland. Its very name is derived from water. But during the last ice age, it wasn't cloud but ice that sat over this land, pushing out huge glacial chisels that sculptured its valleys. Then the ice retreated. The wilderness of Fiordland is now a national park and a World Heritage Site. Travellers from all over the world have long enjoyed its walks, especially the Milford track.
We've had a lot of rain up there over the last 12 hours, and we're expecting a great deal more.
Oh, yay! According to publicity, it's the finest walk in the world. It can also be the wettest walk in the world.
Well, I hope the weather improves for us. It couldn't get much worse. Mind you, this is all some walkers of the Milford track ever see in their 4 days on the track. The gloom and the rain framed in their rain hood. It's summer down here in New Zealand. The forest trees are coming into flower. The rata tree is just coming into bloom. Now it and its relatives are our Christmas tree. This is a glacier-carved lake, very steep-sided and very deep, in parts more than 400 metres deep. And the boat trip takes us to the tip of the longest finger of this glacial lake. For the first 2 days, we'll be travelling up, which is essentially a forest walk, up a valley following the path of a river, before emerging out of the forest and going over a mountain pass. Then for the next day and a half, we travel down another valley following another river till we emerge, after we pass a long lake, to the sea at a fjord.
Between the lake and the fjord, we had a 4-day walk ahead of us, and I sensed an air of anticipation on board Tawera as we neared track beginning. Perhaps a few were having second thoughts about their fitness over 60 kilometres.
Well, we're getting into sandfly country now. We've got some fairly big ones up here at Glade. In fact, it was just yesterday we seen one on the wharf here, standing on his hind legs, drinking them out of a 44-gallon drum. Just shows you how big they can get.
In all the 90 years that the old ferry has delivered walkers to the Milford track, I'll bet all its skippers have been building on the legend of Fiordland sandflies. So amid the usual confusion of finding your backpack, stowing gear and putting on boots, it was the all-important ritual of anointing with sandfly repellent. And to forget is to become a sort of human pincushion and then endure the itch.
Okay, someone, John.
In our group was musician John Gibson and Maria Tinney of the Kaitahu Māori tribe. Her people are of this part of New Zealand, yet it was her first time on the track.
No, it won't be.
Each day of summer, 80 walkers begin from here, and hopefully the same number reach the other end 4 days later. I was also travelling with Craig Potton, who was photographing this and other New Zealand walks.
Not bad, eh?
Andy Dennis on the right was writing about this walk, and Maria's son Koru had taken time off school to be with us.
A short distance from the jetty is Glade House, first night accommodation for guided walkers. From there, the track follows the Clinton River up valley, and first night for independent walkers is spent at Clinton Forks Hut.
You would feel a bit frustrated if you wanted to do a bit more walking. Sandflies are a bit tough, aren't they? Yeah.
The price of independence is to be weighed down with food and bedding. At Glade House, guided walkers receive prepared meals, clean sheets and hot showers.
We scorned their luxuries as we went past, but deep down I think we were a little envious. The Glade House lupins belonged to a New Zealand we were leaving behind. Bracken fern seemed far more suited to this place. The wetness of Fiordland is, of course, ideal for ferns, and it's a lovely place for ducks. Ten paradise shelduck chicks were being led down to the river by their white-headed mother, and a black-headed father looking rather concerned. Craig Potton and Andy Dennis became constant tail-enders. Their impressions of the track would appear in a new book of New Zealand's finest walks.
I think I'm going to enjoy walking up the river today into the evening. It's a really nice feel about it. Just the gentle pace that meanders down this valley. I think it's going to play quite a prominent part in the feelings I have about this next couple of days of the walk until we start to climb up onto McKinnon Pass.
Andy and me are trying to get together a book that gives some images for people both to enthuse them to do walks like this and also to take away after they've done a walk their relationship to the landscape as they move through it, rather than as a guidebook.
I've eaten the puffballs. Have you tried those? They're great. Just slice them up, fry them in a bit of butter. Beautiful.
For Maria Tene, the journey had added significance. This was not only a place of awe, but also a place of her Māori ancestors.
This time in my life is a good time to be here. It would have been a hang of a task if I'd come in another 20 years' time with my mukapunas and my grandchildren having to lug this old kuia over the mountains.
Beech trees were our constant companions. Their leaves were our carpet and filled our socks. Beech forest is ancient. It links New Zealand to Australia, New Guinea, South America, even Antarctica, and to a long-lost supercontinent called Gondwana land. Even in death, beech trees are with us. And at a place called Black Forest, many trees seem to be of the same height and girth.
And I think what's happened, and which has happened with a lot of this forest, is that they're all the same thickness, so they're all grown up at the same time. So some great calamity has happened there, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 years ago.
Yeah.
They've all started off as little seedlings together and grown up to the light. And look, they're still chasing the light. It's a very even canopy. That's what makes it so good.
Yeah. Like Cypress Avenue or something.
Cypress Avenue. Another song, is it?
Yeah.
John wasn't just along for the walk. He was also writing the music for our film.
It seems funny to be walking through a film that I'm going to have to write music for. And what I realise now is that it's going to be incredibly difficult to actually get any of this into a piece of music. The impressions that you get here are just so many, you can hardly locate them. They're buzzing around in your head all the time. And also, the strongest impression is the feeling of your legs at the end of the day, which is something that I'm not used to, sitting home watching TV.
There's no TV, no electricity or hot water at Clinton Forks. Fiordland National Park provides just the basics. At least the sandflies were free. And we received a warm Māori greeting from the hut warden.
Ngā mate o tēnei marae, ngā mate o tēnā marae, ngā mate o tērā marae. Haere, haere, haere.
Bill Beattie welcomed us on behalf of his tribe, the Tūhoe from the North Island.
It is right in our culture that when Māori people meet each other, we do so in the correct manner. Bill was adhering to Māori protocol.
Protocol also demanded that Koro, as the eldest male, make the reply.
The first part, respect and acknowledgement, is always made to our ancestors, and especially here. I mean, look around us.
Every Māori tribe has its own waiata, which are songs of greeting and of place.
The waiata takes you up to the mountains and beyond. And then you look down over the whole area and it sweeps right across our area, Murihuku, and right up here to Pio-Pio-Tahi, right over this place too.
The weather forecast was not good. It was fitting that John and the hut warden played the blues. First night on the track, I always liked to get out and go for a walk. And just 400 metres from the hut, there were glowworms. Fairy strings of pearls that hung down with the glowworm's sticky fishing lines, used to ensnare small flying insects. The glowworm's own lights, which shines from their backsides, goes out when torchlight illuminates them. There's definitely Kiwis about. I've seen they're probing like this all up and down the track. Just like the glowworm uses light to attract prey, the Kiwi uses smell. I mean, it has a bill, something like this, with nostrils set right in the end, and it uses its bill to probe deeply into the ground for insects and worms. The Kiwi, as well as being a bird of the night, is also flightless, like many old New Zealand birds. And in days when New Zealand was a land of birds, that was, well, it wasn't a problem, because birds' only enemies were other birds. They didn't need to fly. But these days, with predators like cats and rats and stoats, not being able to fly is quite a disadvantage. But they're still pretty hard to find.
Fiordland is to New Zealand rocks what the kiwi represents among birds. They are both ancient. These rocks of ages have been under the sea, uplifted, folded, remelted, injected with volcanic lava, then covered with ice. On the second day, the track follows the Clinton River as far as Clinton Forks. From there, it heads up the left branch toward McKinnon Pass. The pass is still more than a day ahead of the walkers.
We're going to wish you a good trip up the track this morning. I know it's a wee bit overcast at the moment. The forecast is for an improvement in the weather. It's going to become fine. So you're free to sort of wander off ahead of the guide from here to Pompolona. and he'll be at the back of the party if you need any assistance in any way. I think it'll get better for you, don't
The size of backpacks is the one sure way of telling guided from independent walkers. And with more distance to cover on the second day, it's the guided walkers who are away earliest. But not before Craig Potton and Andy Dennis.
This morning, I suppose it's a bit late in the morning to be hearing an abundance of birds. I suppose I call myself a writer and not a journalist because I write kind of from the heart rather than to order. Lectern capens in the bank. I hope at the end of it that something comes out of the experience which doesn't guide other people through but opens the doors of their own imaginations.
Looking at what I'm taking in photographs in this lower section of the river is what people see as they pass along that track, and trying to make a composition out of the immediate trees in the foreground, which are forming the frame, if you wish, around these little windows looking through into the forest and the creek beyond.
In every pool we passed, there were big trout cruising up and down. And Heg Thompson told us why there were so many.
Well, it's such a big body of water and so quiet, placid and mirror-like. And when you put a fly on it, a line, a fish can see that for, a long way off.
His experience has taught him that stealth can do the trick. He's had 50 years in these parts, so there's no reason to doubt it.
There's so many tourists that aren't good fishermen, and they thrash the water and do all that sort of thing. But if they see the fish, they go back happy. They saw great big things that were 6 pound weight, and by the time they get home, they're 10 pound weight.
Water continues to shape fjordland. At a place known as the 9 Mile Slip, rain had caused the forest to pull away from the valley wall and slide across the bottom, inundating the old track.
What do you think of this, Maria?
Well, it's like standing in the middle of some great sculpture, something that's been carved out a long time ago.
The 9 Mile Slip was quite recent. It came down in the winter of 1982. But for Maria, it brought to mind a legendary shaper of the fjord and coastline, the god Tuturaki Whanua.
When you stand in the middle of his work and think, good grief, it happened out there where he stood this way and the adze came down. Tuturaki Whanua's work is always unfinished. This has been happening for a long time, and it takes me back to the waiata that Koro knows, and that's the kei hinga te maunga, kei maroke te awa. There you have it, the mountain has come down, kei maroke te awa.